Welcome to the Town of Avon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. If you're interested in having a copy of the agenda or the staff reports, they are available to the tables to the right of the audience. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during any public hearing, please sign up to the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please state your comments to the board and not to staff or the appellant. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. The chair may therefore impose a time limit for each person. Federal law requires that the town make available to all attendees a Title VI public involvement survey. These surveys are on the table to the right of the audience. Members of the public who wish to complete their survey may do so and place them in the designated area. If because of a disability, any person in attendance needs assistance or accommodation to fully participate in this meeting, please notify staff. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Guckenberger.
Here.
Inman. Ransberg.
Here.
Tashler.
Present.
Turner.
Here. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes from 11/19/24. Were there any questions or concerns? And if there are none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept the meeting minutes as written from November 19th, 2024.
A motion by Mrs. Ransberg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Stashler. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. Next item is request for continuances or agenda modifications. Staff?
Thank you, Chairperson Turner, members of the board. We have two requests for continuances. First, SE 24-05 for Dutch Brothers Coffee at 7893 East US Highway 36. If it pleases the board, you could probably take both of these at the same time. I don't think anybody's here to comment on them. Also VAR 24-07. These two cases are a special exception and variance related to a proposed drive-through establishment within the US 36 overlay. When these were filed in staff's research of the property, it was identified that there is potentially an outstanding issue from a previous approval that the town would like to see resolved either prior to this going forward or in conjunction with any approval of these requests. So that matter was brought to the attention of the petitioner, and without getting into too many details on that, the petitioner asked for additional time to research that. We thought that was appropriate. So they requested a continuance to your January 21st, 2025 hearing. Staff supports that, and it would be without additional published notice. Frankly, I'm not sure if the petitioner has sent notice by mail, so we would ask that that be with mail notice to be sent by the petitioner unless they provide proof of a previous mailing. And it would be the same request for both of those cases.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion. I move that we continue SE 2405, 7893 East US Highway 36. Special exception to allow for drive-through facility within Tier 1 of the US Highway 36 overlay to the January 21st, 2025 hearing without additional published notice, but with mailed notice to be sent by the petitioner unless proof of previous mailing is provided.
A motion by Mr. Guckenberger. Is there a second?
A second.
A second by Mrs. Ransberg. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and we'll now deal with the other continuance requests.
I'll move that we continue VAR 2407, 7893 East, US Highway 36, a variance of development standards to allow for drive-through components to be located within the front yard along US Highway 36 to the January 21st, 2025 hearing without additional published notice, but with mailed notice to be sent by the petitioner unless proof of previous mailing is provided.
Motion by Mr. Guckenberger, is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mrs. Ransberg, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Next item is public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on any item not on the agenda? And with no one coming forward, we will close the public comment. And looks like it's 6:37. Moving on to new business. This is VAR 24-08, Family Promise Front Setback.
Thank you again. VAR 24-08 at 72 South Avon Avenue is a request for a variance of development standards to allow for a 10-foot front building setback from Avon Avenue, where the ordinance requires a minimum 20-foot front building setback. There are two parcels here, both unplatted, excluding both existing right-of-way and proposed right-of-way, which is to be dedicated prior to development. The site in total is just a little over a half acre. It is zoned R5. The two parcels were previously improved as single-family dwellings, which were demolished around 2017 on the southern parcel, and the one on the northern parcel just around the beginning of this year. This site was rezoned earlier this year from C2 to R5, which is our highest density residential zoning classification, to allow for what was proposed at the time as a 8-unit townhouse development. We now have pending development plan review petition before the Plan Commission on their January agenda, which would approve a 7-unit residential development along with a waiver for a reduction in parking space dimensions. The site is, so if you take a look at the map here, of course, here's US 36 and Avon Avenue. You have the Circle K station here on the southwest corner, and then the vacant lot that is proposed to be developed with the Brewster's Ice Cream. And then there's an access drive along the south end of that parcel. And then we have where the blue star is here. These two parcels are the subject site along the west side of Avon Avenue. They would get access through that private access drive, which connects to Avon Avenue. Just kind of walking you through the site here. This is a view of the subject site facing west across Avon Avenue. You can kind of see that access drive here, and then the abutting dwelling to the south. So here are the two parcels along Avon Avenue. This is just looking southwest from the northeast corner of the site. So here's Avon Avenue traveling south and the abutting dwelling to the south. Here's that access drive going west from Avon Avenue. And this is a view just looking northwest from the southeast corner of the site. So that abutting dwelling is just off the page here to the left. And then you have the Circle K station, which is north of this site. And then here we're just looking east back across Avon Avenue from the site. So there's the existing ice cream shop there. And then finally looking south along Avon Avenue, the subject site would be off to the right here. There's the abutting single family dwelling to the south. And then looking north across this access drive, here's Avon Avenue. Here's the access drive where this property will gain vehicular access. And there's the vacant lot and the Circle K station. As I mentioned, this is a request to reduce the front building setback along Avon Avenue to accommodate construction of a townhouse development. It is important to note that shorter building setbacks from the center line of Avon Avenue are consistent with the historic development pattern of this area. What's proposed, again, is a 10-foot setback from the proposed full right-of-way of Avon Avenue, which is a 60-foot half right-of-way, so measured from the center line of Avon Avenue to what will be now the front property line of this site after a full 60-foot half right-of-way is dedicated. So going back 10 feet from that would put these buildings 70 feet from the center line of Avon Avenue, which is significantly greater than that of most of the existing buildings on this block on both sides of Avon Avenue. I'm going to show you an illustration of that in a moment. And I want to note that the Department of Public Works is supportive of this request because it would not interfere with any anticipated future widening of Avon Avenue. I'm actually just going to skip ahead because I was talking about the setbacks. So here you can see, again, this is both the blue highlighted parcel and the skinny one to the north are the subject site. This aerial photo is from last year, so it still shows this old single-family dwelling that was on the site last year. And you can see its short setback. It's, I think, about 36 feet from the center line of Avon Avenue, or it was prior to being demolished at the beginning of this year. Now, the ice cream shop across the street is about 82 feet, so that's actually a little farther. But if you look at the two dwelling structures immediately to the south of this site, the first one is right about 46 feet from the center line. And then the second one, which is actually a two-family dwelling, I believe, that one's right about 54 feet from the center line. And then you have this commercial building opposite Avon Avenue, which is just about a little less than 50 feet from the center line. And again, what's being proposed here are buildings or a townhouse building that would be 70 feet from the center line of Avon Avenue. So it would sit back significantly farther than the average of the existing buildings here. Back up here. So this is just an illustration to show, of course, here's Avon Avenue, and you can see the center line marked here. So this first red line shows where the 60-foot half right-of-way will be after that is dedicated to the public. And then the second red line is the ordinance required 20-foot front building setback. So you can see if they built that, it would be set back almost farther than the entire house that it is replacing. But that's gone. So more importantly, looking at the other buildings that do exist, it would be far beyond where the two dwellings to the south are located. This is the site plan. So here's Avon Avenue. Here's that private access drive running west from Avon Avenue. There's a 5-unit building here. There's a 2-unit building here. That's not really germane to the variance request. The variance request would relate to this building being set back 10 feet from this line here, just behind this new public sidewalk is where the new property line will be when the 60-foot half right-of-way is dedicated. So what the petitioner is asking for is the ability to set this building 10 feet from that new property line or right-of-way line. This is a sketch that the petitioner provided, which again shows the outline of the site plan. And so this line, this little dash line right here is the new property line or right-of-way line. And here's the building setback. And again, you can see where that lines up in relation to where the old dwelling was there. But again, more importantly, you can see that it's set back significantly farther than the existing house to the south. You can't see the other dwelling to the south, but it would be set back significantly farther than either of these two dwelling structures to the south or this commercial building on the other side of Avon Avenue. So in looking at variance of development standards, as you're aware, you have 3 statutorily required findings of fact. The first is to demonstrate that it is not going to be injurious to public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. And for this reason, because it will not interfere with any planned or anticipated future public needs for Avon Avenue, and demonstrated by the Department of Public Works support for the variance, we believe that finding number 1 has been met. The second finding is that the use and value of adjacent areas would not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So looking at our second point here, with the proposed setback of this building being 70 feet from the center line of Avon Avenue, which would be greater than most of the existing buildings on this block, it would not in any way interfere with the view from those buildings. It would not be closer to Avon Avenue, so it wouldn't impede their sight lines from the front of their property. And so we can't see how it could possibly have any adverse effect on the adjacent property. So we do believe that the second finding is met. And then finally, that the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. We do believe that the reduction of the depth of the site due to the increase in the width of the Avon Avenue right-of-way does result in a practical difficulty in developing this site for multifamily residential development, which is permitted and intended by the R5 zoning, which was approved by the Plan Commission and Town Council earlier this year. And just to kind of elaborate a little bit on that point, originally when State Road 267 was developed, there was a 20-foot half right away on each side of the center line. And so now there's a 60-foot half right away because obviously, we've gone from a time when that was a 2-lane country road or highway to where now, there are turn lanes. Someday it may be 2 lanes of through traffic in each direction. There are sidewalks and all those things, but all of that can be accommodated in the 60-foot half right of way. But having that 60-foot half right of way instead of the original 20-foot half right of way takes another 40 feet away from this property. So its depth is significantly decreased, and it does make it difficult to meet the ordinance requirements. So we do think it meets the practical difficulty test. In addition to meeting those 3 statutorily required findings, staff would also note that we think that the relief requested appears to be the minimum necessary, and that the need for the relief being caused by government planning to widen the roadway was not caused by the petitioner or the prior owners of the site. I'd also point out that a shorter setback would be consistent with the comprehensive plan's stated overall goal to encourage residential infill development in areas that are already served by utilities, as well as the comp plan's build goal number 4, objective 2, which was to allow for varying setbacks, lot widths, and other standards to create more dense developments, and that providing for more density will allow more affordable housing developments. And the petitioner will probably talk to you a little bit about who's developing the property, and that it does have that goal of meeting affordable housing. But for all those reasons, we do find that the required findings of fact would be met. And so we do recommend approval of VAR 2408, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for staff?
So when this was rezoned to R5, I'm assuming that there was already recognition that there might need to be a request for a variance just based upon the configuration of the lot and 267 and all that sort of thing, correct?
Yeah, I didn't work on that. I'm not sure if it was anticipated at the time of rezoning. The petitioner might have been involved, and he might be able to comment on that. So I do know that they have revised their plans, as I mentioned, from at the time of rezoning, they were proposing an 8-unit building. And I think when they realized how far they needed to set this back, that that, maybe also drainage requirements, but they've put that down as 7 units. But I'm not sure if it was anticipated they'd be requesting a variance then.
When you were describing the lot, I believe you said the access drive to the north is a private drive?
That's correct.
Who owns that? And who's responsible for the upkeep on it?
It's part of the property to the north that Brewster's Ice Cream is proposed to be developed on. As far as the ongoing maintenance obligations, staff isn't, we don't have information on any, private arrangements on how that would be developed, but I would imagine that the petitioner could comment on that in exchange for having access to it. They probably have some obligations to it, but that would be a question I think best
No, that's
for the
probably
petitioner.
not- That's probably not under the purview of the BZA, but I'm assuming the planning commission will look into that.
So could you go back to the one slide that showed the houses that you were using, show the setback, please? Like that, yeah. So the houses that exist today that are still there and the other building on the other side of the road, do you know if those were approved by the town or were those in the county when they were built?
I haven't investigated the dates, but looking at the architecture and condition of those buildings, they all look like they would certainly predate the town's incorporation in, I believe it's 1995.
So they're existing
So-
non-conforming, or basically they
Yeah,
don't conform to the ordinance today?
Yes, we would presume that they are legal non-conforming setbacks.
Thank you. So I guess the other thing too is would the ice cream shop then you look for that to have a reduced setback? Because I'm like, you can't reference, I think, a precedence, and I'm like, is this going to bleed into the ice cream shop too? And when we were talking about sightlines on the north property up by 100 North, we talked about sightlines. So now we got a sightline here. Now these houses, if they were built today, would have to meet the required setback, correct?
Correct. If they were rebuilt, they were taken down and replaced, they would be required to meet the same setback.
So can you help me with how does this differ from what we talked about with the property on 100 North where staff wasn't supportive of a reduced front yard setback?
Well, we did actually support the request near 100 North. So
The front yard setback was.
we did. We actually, so in the first iteration, when the building was proposed with a 0-foot front setback from the right of way of Avon Avenue, we were not supportive at that time for 2 reasons. Because, one was that it was right on the right of way line. The Department of Public Works had asked that it be pushed back a little bit just to have clearance from the right of way. But the other significant difference there was that the existing homes to the south were set back significantly farther. So, if this were the same scenario, the front of those houses would have been set back somewhere probably in this range. And so we had concern about a building pushed all the way up, blocking their view. In this situation, you have the opposite scenario, situation where this building would be set back here. It would be behind these buildings, and it would not at all have any negative impact on those properties. But that proposal on 100 North, and when they revised it and moved the building closer to the back of the lot, we supported the setback variance that they had in the front, which was to put parking a little closer to the right of way than allowed.
All right, thank you. Thank you with that clarification.
Any other questions from staff? Ready to hear from petitioner?
Good evening, Steve Burrito, Avon Engineering, representing the petitioner, Family Promise, and Radiant
Steve, can you
CPC.
press the button?
Hello?
There you
All
go.
right. Do I need to do that again? All right. Just to add a little bit of color to this, Paul did a really good job explaining this, but let me add a little bit of background to this. So when we rezoned these properties a year ago, We were contemplating putting 8 units on the site, and at the time, the town's public works director was looking at future improvements along Avon Avenue, and was not sure that there would be a need at that time for additional right-of-way to be dedicated from the front of this site. So we brought forth a zoning petition with 8 units. And I believe Family Promise applied for various tax credits to make this project work based on 8 units as well. Right before the zoning was approved, the town came back and said, we need an additional 20 feet of right-of-way off the front of this site to accommodate those improvements. At the time, we thought, okay, we can probably make that additional 20 feet work. Fast forward a year when we bring the development plan forward, which has been submitted, and we realized we can't make that additional 20 feet work with a 20-foot front yard setback. So we had to chop 1 unit off. So where we started with 8 units, now we're down to 7. And to stay at 7, we really need that 10-foot reduction in front yard setback, taking another 10 feet of front yard setback off of Avon Avenue, pushes all of the improvements further to the west, and is going to result in the loss of yet another unit. I know it's not really germane to who this is, but Family Promise is trying to provide an affordable housing project in this area, and this is on land owned by the town and land that they're getting from the town. So due to the small size of this site, as Paul mentioned, it's a half an acre. It's not very wide. And as you can see on the site plan, every little bit of area that we've got is needed. We just cannot accommodate an additional setback. The Public Works Director, Steve Moore, has indicated that this reduction in the front yard setback with the additional right-of-way that's being granted by the site will not have any negative impact on future plans for Avon Avenue widening. With regards to the access easement that you mentioned, just for information purposes only, that is a shared private drive, and the maintenance is paid for by the Family Promise site, Brewster's Ice Cream to the north, and the Stanfield development to the west, because all of them, by hook or by crook, are using that drive to get out to Avon Avenue. I don't think this is going to set precedent on the Brewster's Ice Cream site. Their plans have already been submitted multiple times and under review, and the way that their site is laid out with parking and drive circulation, I think their building actually sits, and Paul, you might be able to bring up one of the overall GIS map exhibits, but I think their building actually sits almost completely behind the gas station to the north. So it's significantly farther off of Avon Avenue. Oh, you just can't quite see it. But where that drive running to the north, their building sits even further behind that. So we feel like the reduction in front yard setback is a reasonable request. I will also add, though I don't think it's necessarily germane to this discussion, but Family Promise is working on acquiring those 2 properties to the south for a phase 2 development, and rezoning those as well. So they would again dedicate 20 feet of right-of-way, additional right-of-way for the town across the frontage of those lots as well, and then would continue this same pattern of development onto the south. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have. I hope I touched on questions that you had.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing at 7. Is anyone going to speak?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing at 7. Questions, discussion?
I appreciate that Family Promise has continued working closely with the town to meet our requirements with regards to future development of 267 Avon Avenue. giving up one unit when you only have 8 to begin with is a big sacrifice from a developer standpoint, regardless of who the developer is. And so I appreciate that how closely Family Promise has been working with the town. I know that the town would like to see this happen, and so, cooperation is always appreciated from me at least. I'm sure from everyone else.
I do have a question that, Paul, perhaps you can help us on this. So if we approve this, does this setback, and maybe need help from Dan too, does the setback stay with the property regardless of zoning? Or if the zoning changes, does that affect the setback? Because we talk about practical difficulty and for the development of a multi-family residential unit, but if it would be approved and then in the future it was purchased for some other, like a commercial use, would the setback have to change, or does it stay the same?
Remember, they're saying that the rules that apply to them under their current zoning, they want relief from. And that setback is determined by the zoning.
Right.
So if somebody came in and rezoned it to commercial, a different setback would apply.
Okay.
And the variance might not be needed, might be needed, but if the building is constructed, then they have vested rights in their location.
Okay.
Would you agree with that, Linda? Did I say that right? Okay.
Thank you. I'll follow up with, and based off what you showed us with the plans, I mean, this still allows for the proper sidewalk to be installed. Department of Public Works is supportive of this. The future development of Avon Avenue, any widening will not be affected by this reduced setback.
That's correct. If we had any concern that there would be any future public improvement needs along Avon Avenue that this would interfere with, we would not be supporting it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but are there not ongoing discussions about creating a roundabout there at, what is it, Williams or Galen? Where on the north side of the ice cream shop, are there not conversations about putting in a roundabout there or not? It seems like.
No, we're not aware of any discussion for a roundabout at that location.
Okay. I must have dreamed it while driving past the ice cream shop, while trying to get out of the ice cream shop.
I was just in conversations about this particular site last week, and there are no conversations about a roundabout there.
Okay. Wishful thinking on my part.
I guess I'll point out, number one, I thought the staff report was really good on this one. And I'm in agreement on pretty much everything. When we get down to practical difficulty, I thought staff was very wise to point out that when it comes to practical difficulty, we don't really care who owns the property. As far as the practical difficulty and the right-of-way causing that, man, that's always a tough one for me to swallow. And normally I'd argue, well, maybe this use is too intense, but given that this thing's been rezoned in the last year to R5, which is probably one of our most intense residential uses, that was pretty deliberate. So it's pretty hard to argue that there wouldn't be a practical difficulty in the use of the property. So I think I'm on board with all three criteria here.
I would agree with that.
I would agree. And I think, what we've heard, we'll probably see this coming if a petitioner, Family Promise, is able to secure those additional properties. We'll see this, and we probably would want the continued same type of development going on to have that same frontage along Avon Avenue.
Well, and I think even, those homes are actually much closer to the road. I live very close to there, and I'm always like why would anybody want to live in a house that close to such a busy road? But obviously it was built prior to the town being incorporated, and it was a 2-lane country road and all of that thing. And I think that, that if those properties do get acquired and they are developed as part of phase 2, it will actually be an improvement even with the variance, because those properties will be set further back than the current properties are.
And, and I agree with that. I kind of discount that because those are developed under county standards when that was a 2-lane highway, not a county road. Having lived here for a number of years, we were still a urban area.
Just the vernacularly,
yeah.
generic
I think
country road.
as far as like what we're seeing there with that area, I think I agree with what staff has put in there too, along with their bills.
Any other comments or discussion? If there are none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve VAR 2408, 891 South Avon Avenue, a variance of development standards to allow for a 10-foot front building setback, minimum 20-foot front setback required, because it will meet all of the requirements for a variance of development standards under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Ransberg, a second by Mr. Guckenberger. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Guckenberger,
4.
Turner,
4.
Ransberg,
4,
Tashler,
4.
Thank you. Do we have any other business?
We do not, we just have findings, minutes, and then findings from last meeting for you to sign, so please make sure you sign everything.
We will stick around and sign this. And with that, we were done. Everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.